As a game, I didn't really love Zenith the Last City. I've played plenty of single player VR games with better story, better combat, better exploration, you name it. It wasn't until later on that I realized the true appeal of Zenith. It might be a lackluster game, but the constant open mic chat with spatial audio and the ease of joining parties makes it a unique social experience. The social features lend themselves to an environment where conversation and making friends are strongly encouraged, making it one of the best multiplayer experiences in VR. Unfortunately, the game underneath all of that is in dire need of some work, both in terms of bugs and generally making it less boring. The core gameplay loop of Zenith is pretty much the same as any other MMO. Find an NPC, complete their quest, usually a fetch quest or slay X number of monsters, then report back. Zenith does nothing to make this gameplay loop unique, so the way it plays out is ultimately pretty boring. Combat ranges from extremely boring to kind of fun, depending on your class. I spent most of my time as a Blade Master, the melee class, and was bored out of my mind. The melee combat does not feel particularly good from the jump, and the mechanics introduced later on just make optimal play feel really samey and tiresome. The other class, Essence Mage, was a lot more fun. Using abilities felt a lot more interesting and fun, and the basic attacks can be mixed up between a charge shot or a rapid fire depending on the situation. Each class also has 3 roles to change up playstyles, but they all have the same basic mechanics. Non-combat mechanics are a bit more interesting. Climbing is fun, although rarely ever needed. Flying is both fun and necessary as it helps to move around the map faster and skip unnecessary combat. Cooking was one of the more interesting mechanics as well, as instead of just combining materials, there is a full-fledged cooking minigame. The general aesthetic of the game is based on anime and JRPGs, and the end result is trite and uninspired. Phantasy Star Online has a similar but better aesthetic, and that game came out 20 years ago. Certain aspects of the game also fall disappointingly short. For instance, level cap players are nearly indistinguishable from level 10 players because the endgame gear is just as bland as early gear. Bosses are similarly bland as they're essentially just bigger, purple versions of regular enemies. Zenith is also filled with a lot of bugs. The cooking minigame, for instance, had 2 bugs for me. One where my recipe text was overlapping with itself and was unreadable, and one where my frying pan got stuck inside the stovetop model. Combat also seems to be plagued by bugs or network issues. Enemies would teleport around, often ending up behind you mid-attack, making their attacks unblockable. Dealing damage also failed to register far more often than is acceptable, essentially meaning half of your swings do 0 damage. As it stands right now, Zenith is a very cool social experience. Unlike other VR multiplayer games, you don't have to wait around to join a match or a lobby. Just hop into a server and you can immediately chat with other players, party up, and adventure out into dungeons. If you prefer to party up outside of the game, the Zenith Community Discord has a whopping 124,000 members. Unfortunately, the social aspect is about where the fun stops. Climbing and flying around are cool, but the quests are repetitive and boring, and the combat is extremely hit or miss. Social-oriented players will probably have a great time with Zenith. Solo players who prefer to focus on the combat and questing, not so much.